Let's get back to the basics. What exactly is my crypto strategy for the next coming weeks? Will I be buying? Will I be selling? Remember, this is not financial advice. This is my opinion. And even though I've done extremely well over the past few years, that doesn't mean we'll do well over the next ones, right? But for some crazy reason, people still like to hear what I've got to think. And so let me break it down. So current status is I'm still buying. And that basically means that if we're talking about my spot bags, if we're talking about getting into new fundamental positions, so for example, a new bot of one currency or another, I'm still buying them right now. Why is that? Well, because I feel as if the market is still going to be legging up for an entire another quarter. Matter of fact, I've stated many times that I think the highest point of the season will be hit somewhere between August of this year and January of next year. And since we're not there yet, well, I've only got one thing to do, right? When will I stop this buying spree then? Well, that's a very difficult thing to answer because it will be vastly different had I not been in the position that I am now. Let me explain two parts. If I am me, well, I can basically stop buying right now and just let all this ride. And that's good enough. But obviously, as you're in your rolling system, you want to make sure every single dollar you've got for safeguarding right now to buy dips, well, you kind of hope to at least put it into something. I like to put my stuff into something, you know what I mean? You like to make use of every single dollar you've got while also being very safe. We'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But then if I were new, and this is a crucial difference, I'd still enter. And you might ask, well, why if the market's pumped up so much? And it's because of how my strategies work. For example, if you take a look at some of my bot strategies, and this is just some to explain my thinking process, it doesn't really matter, even if you're wrong, right? We for example, have a 10K to a mil challenge. We might be very, very wrong on this most of the time for reinvesting because as you can see, it's going against us. We're down. But all I know is because it's cashing out these grids by the volatility, right? Because it's buying and selling as the market moves up and moves down, automatically, over time, this will work out pretty well. So since I essentially still think the only, in my opinion, question is when exactly will we peak? Will it be within 1 week? Will it be within 6 months? And it's not really a question of will we, it's just a matter of when exactly in that time frame will it happen. This is just a strategy that I think is quite easy. And as you can see, this account is just about, I think, 1.1 million or something like that in terms of longs open. Then over on Blow, we've also got, I think, 1 million or something like that, a little over 1 million on here. Then we've got Bybit, then we've got 𝗬𝘗𝗃, then we've got different Bybit, then we've got different. Some of my positions, though, if you take a good look, are still at a loss. And so, funnily enough, I can actually add to them right now and, well, basically start over, get myself an even more solid spot, which is what I did for XRP as well. This almost $900,000 XRP position you're seeing right here was also at minus 80 or minus 90 or minus $100,000 before. And I said at that point as well, just wait, it'll turn back around. We just got to give it patience. But the thing is, if I was not convinced the market would go up, I would sell this all right now because realize the way I think about P&L, the way I think about this profit, it's $166,000 in the profit. If I make one click right now, all I gotta do is just go here and press close, and I sell $900,000 worth of this coin, make $170,000 profit. That's it. So for me, that is money I have right now, right? That is my value. If I decide to leave it, at that point, I'm losing money. For me, I could literally just close the position right now and open it again, and this P&L will say 0, right? But to me, it's all the same. It's all just mental gymnastics if you say it doesn't, but it also depends on your tax situation. But for me, with no capital gains tax, it's all the same. So the way I think about every single choice here is, do I think the market will move up or down? Not in a few day time span, but over the time I am comfortable keeping this position open. And still, as at this point, from almost any one of my risk reward type of, well, let's just call it analyses, I still think it is worth it to let this one ride. So what are the caveats? Well, one very important caveat is I'm opening this with medium amounts of money. So as I've stated before, some of my positions might still be at a loss. Some of them are meant to be at a loss. For example, the XRP bot is meant to trade at a loss because that way it can grind at the profits so we can keep reinvesting. But by reinvesting, we always buy at a higher and higher price every single time. So if I always say that these are some of the best risk reward opportunities, why don't I full port it? Why don't I go all the way in? And that is just something that I said I've learned throughout the years. One of the most important things for me is balance in life, where I am a very, very I should call it a very big risk taker. By the way, I would never advise you anything. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm never making you any guarantees. Nothing I say here is financial advice. These are just my own personal stories and journeys. I understand. I like risk, in that sense, but I'm also quite sane. Whereas there have been times over the past 10 years, me and being in the crypto market, where I was not so much. And I learned a few very crucial things. One, it's always nice to have some money in your bank. Second, it's always nice to not be fully in, keep a little bit of space open to give it one last push, if you know what I mean. And third, it's always nice to have something else of an investment just to kind of balance your life out a little bit. Now, I'd say the third one can be ignored in good times like this, in my own humble opinion, but it's mostly keeping a balance between having some sort of reserve and, well, I guess just not being fully in. Why? In case the market does start to make a massive downturn right now, right here, I'm going to be chilling. Why? Because I can still add a significant amount more to my positions, whereas otherwise I'd be sweating a little bit. And if we remember August of 2023, maybe it was August 2023, August 2024, I don't remember exactly. I remember I was in Mallorca though in a nice villa, and I was getting wrecked all the way because all of a sudden we saw the biggest crash for crypto in years. All of a sudden overnight, I think like the 4th or the 5th of August somewhere, probably 2024. And what I realized at that point is I had enough money for sure to buy all the dips, but it was not on the accounts. Then I realized, I should always have a nice little buffer, so I should never go all in with too high of a leverage. I should always keep a nice buffer so I can save myself, so I can add more in case the price starts going down lower. Because if you now look back, had I been a real man, which I was, right, and I added to those positions when the market starts going down, which is why I always say in every single one of my videos, if any of my strategies goes down like 50%, I double it. If it goes down 50%, I double it again. I double. Which is why some of these are lower than others because they might have gone straight up and I never had to add. This one is minus 40, but the problem is virtuals, I kind of am like, you know what? I kind of don't care for it anymore. I prefer to just open new ones. But then again, I should because, fun fact, this XLM bot right here, which became a most profitable one, the only reason it did is because I bought halfway when it was down like 60% or 80% or something like that. Anyway, if I decided that day, which I did, to buy the dip significantly, I'm with a few dudes around the table. We're all talking about how, oh, this sounds so strange. We're all talking about how we're going to go all in at that point because it was the craziest cash in times. And actually, most of my friends were mostly buying stocks and things because it was also a crazy day for stocks, right? I think it was one of the biggest wipes ever, perhaps the biggest. And it made me realize today as well, you should always be prepared for another doomsday, just like a few weeks ago with the whole looming WW, It's nice to have a little bit of comfort. I know my account can be down a few $1 million, right? I don't really mind though, as long as I've got something to hold on to. As long as my positions don't get wrecked, as long as I gotta be patient, I'm okay. The thing I'm not comfortable with is if I get wrecked all the way and my balance is 0. If we take a good look at 𝗕𝗁, he's a very well-known trader in the crypto Twitter community who basically turned $20 million into $100 million in like, what, a week? Just by longing Bitcoin basically with what, 40x, 50x, something like that. Pretty crazy when you really start diving in. But you can call him a degen because he basically said Bitcoin price is going to go up now, and it worked. But then afterwards, he kind of kept the rouge going, and it didn't work. Now, if in hindsight, he only had a bit more money to sustain his little downside, right? Which is, by the way, minus like 120 million though. So, I mean, it's a pretty big swing. But regardless, had he lowered the leverage just a little bit, or had he cashed out a little bit more on that way up, just a teeny tiny bit more, it could have perhaps saved himself slightly on that way down. And right now, his plus 100 million could have maybe been plus 200 million. And again, the difference there could only be a week or two. And when I take a look at the market right now, since again, from my own personal perspective, we're talking about days and weeks for when all of a sudden we are back at a new high, a new high, a new high. All I have to do is to not get wrecked on a minus 20%, or maybe in the worst case, minus 20 something percent move throughout the day, which again, I've set myself up so I'm never. And I could do that by setting orders. I could do that by having cross with more money in the account. There's a lot of different ways to do it. It's automatically with the bots, for example. But even just by having spot, just the coins in my portfolio, well, in theory, I can buy, this is why we're going back to point number 1. I can literally buy every single day right now. The only calculation is, should I be buying this coin or that coin? It's never, in my book, a question of should I buy. No. It's never a question of when should I. No, really not. I've demonstrated to you guys many times over the past 2 weeks where we were live streaming and I said, you know what, I'll just buy $50,000 worth of XRP right here. And just for example, right now, let's look at, this is a good example. I'm looking at ETH right here, right? I'll just buy another, let's set it up here real quick. Let's just buy another $30,000 worth of ETH right here. I'll just click it open, you can see this price. I'm not even checking what the price is. We just bought $30,000 worth of ETH. Why? Because again, I'm not gonna get wrecked over this. And I keep telling people sometimes that the only one thing they gotta be a bit careful of is that they can sustain a juicy, sharp correction. But if you can, well, you can be very particular about where exactly you want to enter and well, how much percent, blah, blah, blah. But that is, again, if you are a trader, if that's your thing, hey, you make the choices, brother, right? But in my case here, what I mostly showcase, I'm actually talking about strategies that are really, really slow. Why do we do that? Because they're easier. There's so many, 1,001 different ways to make profit intraday, throughout the day, by having juicy entries, juicy exits. But we all understand as well that most people get consumed by greed. Most people, they do not have the patience, do not have the money management to make it big. I know there's people watching right now though that are freaking geniuses at what they do. And that's why I always want to say, hey, if you found something that worked for you, please go for it. Because when I was younger, I used to think I have no edge. I used to think things are not possible until you realize, oh, there's a 28-year-old kid who made a few $100 million. You think in your head that couldn't be me, but it could. And it's not luck, it's not nothing. You can literally just do whatever you're doing right now. Maybe the results are not showing yet. Maybe you've seen some pattern though, and all of a sudden, 6 months later, you have $100 million. People think this is impossible, but it's not. I've seen it firsthand. Somebody going from completely normal to $100 million plus in the span of a few months. And again, I'm not guaranteeing you'll make any results. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm just saying, don't think that you wouldn't be a person that's able to do it. And also another very big if or statement or side note, caveat, whatever you want to call it here is, you know, every single season, I try to deny the possibility of an altcoin season. Every single time I try to say, but what if it doesn't? And sometimes that makes me happy. The idea that I can think that way of thinking, what if it doesn't happen? What if it's just Bitcoin? But there comes the thing. If it's just Bitcoin, I'm still good because I have so much money in Bitcoin. But that's one, right? And if all my alts go to zero, but Bitcoin takes all that money, I'm still good. If you have no Bitcoin, that's a diversification issue, right? But let's say, indeed, it doesn't work out. We don't get an altcoin season. Well, I don't think we're going to zero. So does that mean we just go sideways? Well, I've got my bot strategies for me that are still going to generate me more results than any other asset really would, in my own opinion. Okay, but no, okay, we're just going to go up, but not in a crazy full altcoin season way. So I'll still make good money then. So only where I'm in a really bad spot is if we crash so hard within a day that some of my positions get wrecked, but many of y'all won't even have that problem because you're just spot. And I won't have the problem because, again, with the way I do things, if you just set your orders up nicely or you're just not too deep where you can't handle a bit of a push down, I think, again, what is the probability of ETH seeing another $1,500, right? I think the probability is so freaking small. And again, I keep that logical train of thought going. What if, what if, what if? And my conclusion to most of them is, yeah, from all those risks to rewards, it still just makes sense to go at it really hard right now and maybe regret it later. Because throughout history, I just told you, I learned many, many things. But one of those things is that every single time the crypto market has gone higher. And every single time when it was that high, I realized, I should have just not doubted it because I talk to everybody I speak. And I always tell them, yeah, I think Bitcoin, I think crypto is going to go higher. I really do. But then why do I say that to some people? And then my portfolio is not saying the same thing. Now, again, I can say, oh, I better be rational. I don't want to go all in, which is true. I never say going all in is a good idea. But the counter to it is, if I am so convinced, which I am, that it's a 6-month window, which I really think it is, why not go a bit harder? Which is why you've seen me open hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past just few days here. And why I keep opening tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars every single day still, even though we're almost peaking, is because I understand that if I go all in at once, there's a big risk that I just by the day before a 10%, 15%, 30% move. And if you're doing very small amounts, I don't think it matters too much. If I was adding $300 every week or something like that, Depends on how much money that is to you, of course, right? But if you're adding millions of dollars every month, this can become quite a big thing if all of a sudden you see a 30% drop, because $1 million times, for example, 5 or 10 can be, with leverage in that case, within a 30% drop, all of a sudden you can be in a pretty annoying spot if you're losing $800,000 or so in 2 days. Again, it's not like it's a problem for, in that case, your strategy perhaps, but again, the strain is all mental. It's almost all in your head. And you might say, Dusty, why are you talking numbers? It's to put some perspective into it. I'd say the higher the number you're trading with, and there's even numbers that my friends are trading with that I don't really touch, right? Everybody has their own size. I've never opened a $250 million position, but some people around here are, right? And that's all relative size. Some people are really, really happy to open a 1K position. Everybody has their own relative size, and whatever they're doing, I don't care about. Really, I don't. All I care about is for me, seeing my own results. At the end of the day, it's a pretty lonely journey, but my results and whatever I'm achieving here, the funniest part about the bigger market when it comes to stocks and all these is whatever I'm doing, if I'm sharing those thoughts, if I'm sharing my strategies, it doesn't really hurt me to do that. Nobody can really take anything away from me here. All I can do is look at the comments, see the feedback, see if anybody agrees, see if they have the same, maybe they have something to add to my strategy, maybe they can make it better, maybe you find like-minded people, maybe I can inspire somebody. But essentially, if we're talking about the core of what I do is, I just am very confident in a certain set of assets. I just buy them with some leverage, again, which is a personal choice just to make the gains more, but I wouldn't have to. I could just buy them spot, which I've done for the last 10 years. I have coins on ledgers, I just have them sitting. This is just because, again, I have dollars. Maybe you earned it. Maybe you've cashed it out over the past few years with your movements. At some point, which is people like me, you don't just want to only have coins. Maybe you want to also just try to make your dollars work for you. And there's, again, a few options. One is all these DeFi strategies. Second is to buy more coins and add it to your spot. The third is keep shorter term positions open where you're thinking in your head not about the amount of coins you have. And that's why I always like to be for them to be denominated in USDT. All I care about is the dollar value of this. And I kind of feel as if it's a job more so than me just holding coins. I separate the two because my coins I'm holding, I do not want to touch. Those are generational things. Whereas with these, I can just kind of keep stacking, sometimes enter here, exit there. Sometimes I just realize, you know what? I feel like I've earned enough and I just close some. Now, these are all stream positions, so I don't like to do that. But for my own trades, I very often like to do that. Just whenever for example, I double it, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's done. That's good enough. And sometimes there's no real rationale behind there. Sometimes it's not actually at the perfect resistance. It's not actually at the perfect level. It's because I understand that I do not want to live with many regrets. If I feel strongly about a certain choice, I make it and I don't second guess my choices. Why? Because if you've been investing as long as, I guess, significantly as part of how much it is to my life, right? Not necessarily in terms of monetary here. But it's been most of my life for the past decade here. It's what I do every single day, most of the day, most of what I'm looking at every single day. You realize that the worst thing, money, you can have every single dollar you've ever wanted. I can buy anything I ever want, right? It doesn't necessarily give you this satisfaction because you can always look back at the mistake. You can always look back at that one trade. You can always look back at how you could have 10x'd it, blah, blah, blah. You can always sit here thinking about 1,001 different things. So I always say to people, my number one most important life choice there, life motto, whatever, is don't regret, or at least try to minimize regret. That's the one holy thing I stand by, the most important thing in my entire life. When it comes to these crypto positions, to do that, that's what everything is based on. So why do I keep buying every single day? Because I realize that for me, it's all still a 6-month window. So if I consistently keep it up, I have a very high probability of, if we go up, to just get myself some pretty juicy entries because I bought over time. And if we go down, at least I get the satisfaction of not thinking I all in just before a major spike downwards. And again, I could enter right now and just wait. And as long as I don't get wrecked, I'm still fine. But it's a mental thing. It's a mental satisfaction where I sometimes like to just enter throughout periods of time just to keep yourself in a flow as well, where you're more involved with the assets. If I open it once and I forget, very often you get a bit disassociated. You're going to just watch the number go down and you're going to stress. But if I'm constantly adding, and potentially whenever we are in good profit, constantly selling, I'm constantly busy with this. I see it more as a flowy thing. And again, ultimately these investments, especially in markets as volatile as these, should be flowy. If you keep them stuck forever, they don't really generate you any cash flow. This might bring a lot of other problems with it, in my opinion. So it's important, even though I'm not showcasing it in many of the videos here too much, to just keep selling every single time, not necessarily every single day. But for example, in a good pump, out of this 170K, right, I only took out 6,000. It should be significantly more just to keep the flow going. Out of the, for example, let's say I sell 40K right now, right? 1/4 of the profit is now done. I have now 40K that I could put back in. Realize that we bought into this with only 80,000. So I could open half another trade of this, basically, or I can, you know what, matter of fact, I cash out 80K. All of a sudden now, I put this, for example, to isolate it, and okay, in this case with 10x, it's not the juiciest maybe, but as at this point now, I've cashed out whatever I put in. Now, if I put my stop loss basically back at entry or slightly above it, now we're completely golden, because even if the market does decide to go crazy down, we're locked in, right? And there's 1,001 strategies you could do with that, but it all depends on what you like mentally. Because ultimately, again, this is all based on the fact that I think the crypto market's gonna move up anyway, and all we gotta do is like maximize our gains in this 6-month period. And this is my strategy for it. So yeah, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, let me know down below. Ultimately, there is no good, there is no bad, and anybody who criticizes me will probably have valid points, because I can even think of a lot of counters to whatever I've just told you. But I would also tell you that if I look at most of the extremely rich people I know, right, most of the people that have done really well, it wouldn't necessarily be that most of them have the best algorithms in that sense. It's not as if they have the biggest edge in terms of the strategy. A lot of them just got a bit of craziness in their mind. And most of them really, if we're talking about the top echelon, they just believed in something. And that might sound stupid. Why do you believe? I mean, if I had just believed even harder in XRP than I did, I would probably be 10 times as rich as I am today. I mean, throughout the entire journey, I have videos of me buying XRP at 11 cents saying, I'm going all in. But I never really went all in, did I? Right? I went very hard at those levels, but I could have gone at least 10 times as hard if I really wanted to. Now, if that is sane, if that is something you should be doing, is a different question. Again, I'm not suggesting you to do anything. I'm just saying about me. But then again, if I believed really, truly as much as I like to say, then why don't the numbers show it, right? Why don't the numbers show it? And with this mindset, I keep grinding out every single day. I realize, you know what? If we go down, at least I freaking tried, but I'm so confident it will work out. And I want to quit this video now because I'm getting too freaking worked up. I want to buy my whole freaking bag. So I want to go out there. You know, I want to take on a fist fight with Santa right now and just take the freaking gifts so I can buy my, take the sacks and put more coins inside. I'm going crazy right here. But anyway, if you want my strategies, just keep watching the daily videos. All I'll say. That's about it.